Alright, it's Mr. Bernay. We're going to practice some percent problems. In these problems, we're trying to find percents of a number, and I'm going to show you two different ways to do that, to try to solve these problems. The first way is to use a proportion, which we should all be familiar with and how to use. It shows you an example here. So 11% of 840, the proportion you set up with one number, your percent number, over 100, because remember, percent means per 100, per cent, remember that word cent means 100. So our first ratio that we set up in our proportion is the percent. So we just put our percent number over 100, and then we set that equal to the number we're trying to find of the other number. So again, the first ratio is the percent over 100. Second ratio is a part to whole comparison. The whole in this case is 840. We're trying to find what number is 11% of that number 840. So that's the way we do the proportion method, and I'll show you some examples here. So let's try number 1. So our percent is 75. Okay, so our first ratio is going to be just 75 over 100, because that's our percent. What is 75% of 52? So 52 goes on the bottom, since that's our whole, and we're trying to find what part of 52 is 75%. So once we have it set up, we can just cross multiply and divide by 100. So let's see what that is. So 75 times 52 divided by 100. So our answer here is 39. Okay, so 39 is 75% of 52. 39 is our part, 52 is our whole there. Alright, let's try number 2. So this works the same way. We're going to set up our proportion. And again, our first, drop the light here. Our first ratio is just the percent, so we have 40 over 100 for the percent. And then our second ratio is what part of 65 is 40%. So that's how we set up our proportion. And again, we cross multiply, divide by 100. For these type of problems, we're always going to be divided by 100. So 40 times 65, take that number divided by 100. Oh, that's not right. Try again. 40 times 65 divided by 100. We get 26. So in other words, this is saying 26 is 40% of 65, which makes sense. Okay? So that's how we solve those problems using proportions. The other way that I'd like you to try is to use an equation. And it's up to you which one you prefer. If you'd like the proportion method that we just tried, or if you prefer this equation method. This, I think, is a little bit quicker. Some of you might like it better, but you have to be good at converting percents to decimal. Okay, so in our example it says, what is 11% of 840? And what we do in our equation method is to change 11% into a decimal. So again, if you remember, to change a percent to a decimal, we just move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So we get a decimal equivalent of 0.11 for 11%. Alright, and since the word of in math means to multiply, we're going to take our decimal equivalent of 11% and multiply it by the number. So 0.11 times 840, that gets us 92.4, which is 11% of 840. Alright, so that seems like a lot. Let's try a couple examples, and I think you'll find that it's pretty easy. Okay, so our two steps are to first turn this percent to a decimal. We're doing the equation method. So our decimal is 0.52. We move the decimal place 2 places to the left. Alright, and then since means to multiply, we take that 0.52, multiply by 25. And feel free to use your calculator. 0.52 times 25, that equals 13. So that way it's pretty quick. The equation method is pretty quick. Again, you just have to know how to turn the percent to a decimal and then multiply by the number they give you. So 52% of 25 is 13. Let's try number 14. Again, we just turn this percent to a decimal, so instead of 36%, now I have 0.36. Means to multiply. There's our equation. 0.36 times 175. And we get 63. So 63 is 36% of 175. Okay. Let me try one more. Let me do one with a decimal in the percent. That might be confusing for you. So let's try to convert 37.5 on number 23 here to a decimal. So this says 37.5% of 104 is what we're trying to find. So to turn this percent to a decimal, we just move the decimal just like we did before, 2 places to the left. Now our decimal is 0.375. Make sure you get all three of those numbers, and we multiply by 104. So the steps are still the same. Don't let that extra number behind the decimal throw you off. Do the same process. 0.375 times 104. Our answer is 39. Alright, so I'm going to have you try the rest on your own, please. For this homework, I'd like you to try both the proportion method as well as the equation method, just so you can get familiar with each method and kind of pick out which one you prefer and which one you might like to use going forward. So good luck.